Howdy folks, before we start, I gotta address the elephant in the room. Isn't leeching kind of a scumbag thing to do? Yes it is. That being said, the next mass worlds are generally overrun with bots and vennies, so as long as your moral compass points in a comfortable gray area, you shouldn't feel too bad about doing this. Timestamps are in the description, let's get started. I've been asked several times, both in and out of game, about my next AFK. I used this to get roughly my first billion gold on osrs and did it entirely AFK while I worked from home. The long and short of it is this: in the mass worlds, as long as you do 25 damage to any minion, that means Blood Reavers, her priests, or Nex herself, you have a chance to get one of her rare drops. This means any piece of Torva, Zerite Vambraces, Nihilhorn, or Ancient Hilt. Now, doing 25 damage can be done in practically any gear, but if you're trying to AFK Nex for money, I'm gonna guess you're probably in rags. The bare minimum for gear I'd say is Osmund's Fang, Blessed D'hide / Carols, Onyx Jewelry, a Light Bearer, and an Ancient Blessing for praying at the altar inside the next room. The rest of your slots, fill them out with your highest magic resist items. If you want to get really sweaty about your leeching, I recommend a Void Waker for guaranteed damage with the spec every kill, Max Missouri, a Spectral Spirit Shield, Ring of Suffering Eye, and if you're feeling extra goofy, a Din's Bulwark to camp after you get your damage in. The fight itself is extra simple: deal 25 damage, sit in a corner. You'll want about half Sarah's, half Restores in the inventory, and then an anti-poison just in case you get sick. When you leech, you take little to no damage throughout the entire fight, and next drop Sarah Brews, Restores, Sharks, Spare Potions, so you should never have to spend any money on restocking supplies. For brevity's sake, I'll walk you through 2 clips here real quick, and to be extra safe, throw in a live commentary after that. For those of you who feel comfortable, feel free to skip to the next section where I'll talk about rough drop rates, gold per hour, and my experience after over 7,000 KC leeched. Okay, hello again. Here we are in the corner, as described before. We're putting on Pray from Mage, which will camp most of the fight, and Piety to make sure we're doing big damage. We put our spec on and hit a 38 there right off the bat, so that's nice. I did a double spec just because with a Light Bearer, you generally will restore 50% of your special attack by the time Nex is done. Kill times vary, obviously, but there you go, sitting in the corner. Second phase, you do want to pray range. The closer she gets to you, the more damage she does, and you definitely want to be praying range for that. But once she switches and says, you know, we're doing blood now, or I'm siphoning the blood from your soul, or whatever edgy bullshit she's on about, you can't mage and you just sit there. Really not a whole lot to do. And as you see here, I turned off mage. You don't even really need to have it on. You can for a safety measure, but if she's nowhere near you, if she's on the other side of the room and you're obviously outside of her hit range, there's really no reason for it. I don't really think there's much else to say here, so I'll go ahead and fast forward this one. And there you have it, pretty easy kill. If there's more than 20 people in the room, the loot will drop right at your feet, so you barely even have to move, assuming you're doing over 25 damage to Fumis right at the start there. Starting up on the second fight here, you can see she's screaming at last and then going through all the names of her people. I do want to point out quickly that Fumis, even though you can like start damaging him as soon as the fight starts, like you can see I can click him there, you're still going to hit zeros. His hitbox doesn't start until slightly after, and you'll get used to the timing when you start doing it, but that does obviously mean if you don't have high melee attack that you can miss, like I just did there, right? I had a small window, a small opening to spec out my 25, and I missed it, and that's okay. You'll see it more in the live commentary if you stick around to watch that, but just pray range, run to the next minion, try and do damage there. Only did 16. Go ahead and pray mage, and then she's always going to spawn some Blood Reavers for you. Or I shouldn't say always, but 99% of the time she'll spawn Blood Reavers. Super easy to hit. There's like 8 of them in the mass worlds. See, I didn't even do full damage there, but then I hit a 29. And now I can go and AFK for the rest of the fight. Next up is the live commentary. I did spend some time beforehand talking about things like ecumenical keys and ancient essence and the worlds to do next mass on and stuff like that. So bear with me. It's a little bit talky, but enjoy. Next worlds are going to be worlds 332 and worlds 505. That's for the United States and the UK respectively. Both generally have 20 to 50 people depending on peak hours for those time zones, but most of the time you'll see that they have roughly 35 in there. This means you're looking at like a 1500 to 1650 kind of range of drop chance. Again, when numbers are that big, it's, you know, fractions of percentages that are changing, so it doesn't really fucking matter, but in case you're curious. I set it in the gearing stage, but you do want an Ancient Blessing or at least a piece of Ancient D'hide so that the minions here won't attack you. Next is, like any other God Wars boss, you do need to kill the minions out here. Depending on your combat diaries, you'll need roughly, 50 down to 30 essence to open this door, or you can bring an ecumenical key. Next does drop ecumenical key shards, so, the longer you're here, the more likely you are to just build up a bunch of ecumenical keys. I still have, I think, like 9 keys worth in the bank just from sitting here. There's a bank outside it next, so you can get ready. You'll just want a bunch of Sarahs and a bunch of restores. You'll need an antidote just in case you get poisoned. And that's pretty much it. You're good to go from there. You can right-click peek to see how many adventurers are actually in the next arena at any given time. Again, drop rates don't really matter when it's in mass. You either get it or you don't. Pretty much what you'll expect here. Honestly, you might want to turn on Entity Hider just to clear it up, but you'll just see a room full of people running around with their heads cut off. Fight's gonna look a little something like this. She'll pop in and scream the names of her people, Fumus, Umbra, Rar, and whatever. You'll want to camp mage, get ready to spec, and then dump your spec onto Fumus here. Did 14 damage, did 27 damage there. Second phase, you'll want to pray range, pretty much just match what everyone else is doing in the room. I'm not entirely sure I got a hit splat off there, so I am going to run over here just to be safe and start meleeing Umbra. That's 14 plus 8. Again, not positive that I got all the damage, so if I want to be extra safe, I can always run away from next here, praying mage. Then if I really need to, the Blood Reavers are when you can really do your damage. There's 25, turn everything off to the corner, and go AFK for the rest of the fight. Pretty much that simple. Not a whole lot to do. Took 0 damage. I was camping Piety there on accident for a little bit too long. You really only need it when you're about to attack, but that's the fight, guys. It's really that simple. There is a range. I'm not going to be sweaty enough to actually, plug in her range so that you can see it around here. But, there's a range at which she can hit you. I'm clearly out of it right now. You'll kind of get a feel for it if you plan to leech here for a long time. Here she goes into her final phase here. She will start jumping around. This is why you have the heavy magic gear. You can throw Protect from Mage on and just camp it for the entire time. If you're paying a little bit more attention and want to conserve prayer, you can take it off, of course. But, final phase, just make sure she doesn't jump to you. And there you go. There's your loot. Like we got Death Runes, Super Restores, and Cerebrus. Thank you for the free bag. Quick math. Next has a 1 in 43 chance of dropping any rare item, with the denominator being multiplied by the number of players in the room. Once that 1 out of 43 is rolled, it's an even 1 out of 6 for which a rare item gets dropped. So, for example, if 30 people were in the next mass and they all did an equal amount of damage, Next would have a 1 out of 1,290 chance of dropping a rare item in your name. Now, Next does not function off just that rate. She does slightly increase drop rate depending on damage done. So, if you dealt a little bit more damage, you'll have a slightly improved drop rate than if you were just going to do your 25 damage in Leech. On top of that, there is MVP, or person who did the most damage, gets a bonus of 10% increased drop chance. So again, all damage being equal in a 30-person mass, the MVP would go from a 1 out of 1,290 drop rate to around a 1 out of 1,161. The reason I bring up these drop rates is that due to the fact that you will be leeching, you will never have exactly a 1 out of 1,290 chance of receiving an item. You will more realistically have a 1 out of 1,500 to 1 out of 2,000, depending on how many people are in the mass world at a given time. The mass worlds in my experience have anywhere from 20 to 50 people, fluctuating throughout the day of course, so rates could go even lower. But when I say a next mass has a 0.07% chance of dropping an item when you try versus a 0.05% chance of dropping when you leech, do you really give a shit? I think it's important to know the drop rate information because it keeps your expectations at bay. I did not upload this video because it is some hidden money maker that is going to max your account's gear in a week. If you're picking up Blood, Soul, and Death Runes, the Dragon Bolts Unfinished, Onyx Bolts E, and the Runite Ore off her drop table, you'll make roughly 1 to 1.5 mil an hour from those drops. I reiterate, this is not going to make you rich quickly. But if you're working from home, it might just mean that when you turn your head back over to RuneScape, you could see next dropping you a 400 mil bag. So in my personal experience, across just over 7200 KC at roughly 2 minutes a kill each, spending 8 hours a day there while I was working from home, I saw 2 Nexlings, 2 Torva Helms, and a Nihilhorn. Taking into consideration the 1 to 1.5 mil an hour I just talked about, we have a total of 900 mil from rares, 240 mil from passive drops, and 1 very disappointing duplicate pet. I have met a lot of fuckers through the next mass, and their experiences leeching range from getting 3 Torva pieces in under 1000 KC to going over 5000 KC dry. When you're dealing with numbers like 1 out of 1300 or 1 out of 3000, sometimes RNG is just going to be a fickle mistress. I've been asked about my method a lot over the past year, so I hope this helped at least someone. If it did, consider liking and commenting. It really does help the video grow. If something was confusing, let me know in the comments. I pretty religiously check and reply to every comment that I can. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Love you all. Bye-bye.